Hello, it's Natasha Edwina for Goddess Vibrations. Today I am talking with Shophar Graves about Divine Masculine Rising. And so he will be coming on here in just a moment. And I apologize for the late start. We had some technical difficulties, and because of that, we are not live streaming on YouTube. We will be uploading this to YouTube at a later date. So we decided to just go with IG Live tonight, where folks were expecting us. Waiting patiently for Shophar. And there he is. Hey, Monty.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah, so we
And
we made it.
now we want to have the volume up.
Okay, yes.
All right. So here we are. How you doing?
I'm feeling good, feeling good. I know we just had, as far as like getting this all together, so I appreciate you making the space for this moment here, and we are here now. Thank you.
Yeah, so I know that anybody that's been watching regularly, they already know you. We've done this a couple times already and had some really fantastic conversations. And as I was
Mm.
saying before we went live, it's been a bit of a rowdy week for me, and a day, in fact, that I was really looking forward to connecting with you, because I always feel so energized and stimulated, and yet so at peace every time I speak with you, the way that you're, so grounded, but you just have these brilliant insights, I think, that everybody should hear. And for anybody that's joining us tonight who isn't already in your Instagram stories, they ought to go check that out, because you post a lot of thought-provoking stuff that's not that's accessible to everyone. I think that nobody's going to feel what's the word, ostracized or whatever else by ingesting that.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So where do we talk? Where do we start with this topic? I know that it's a topic that I feel like it can still ruffle some feathers, even if you don't intend to. So perhaps, because anytime we talk about male, female, and of course I'm broadcasting from Venus and you're broadcasting from Mars right now. So we're representing. But anytime you talk about the men and women, we think it's men versus women. I think in a society it's so polarized, right? Everything's a binary, and it's like you got to choose a side, you got to choose a sports team, or who's your team. I know I grew up in Wisconsin, and every time, like, I keep hearing, oh, you're a Packers fan, and I'm like, do I have to be? Like, what if I don't choose a team? What if I don't watch sports? Like, then what? How do you label me? How do you identify me? And
Right.
so I feel like that sort of thing can happen even when we're talking about feminine, masculine. And this conversation is not meant to divide. It's meant to create more understanding, and how do we hold these dual perspectives together and keep that equality, that balance, that unity.
I love the way you put it, Natasha, and I feel like what the symbol that I love the most that depicts it, I feel very aptly, is the yin and yang.
Mm-hmm.
And you see how they're flowing into each other, and they
Mm-hmm.
each, the black one has the kernel of the other has the black, the black eye or the black seed in it, and vice versa for the white one. So I love the yin and yang, symbol for the yin and yang theory. It is just a theory. It's not to say that anything is yin or yang ultimately, and I think we can say the same thing of masculine and feminine. They're concepts, ultimately. Now we can get into maleness and femaleness, that has to do with genitalia. But when we're talking about masculine and feminine, to me, we're just simply talking about energy.
Absolutely. And then, so how would you define the divine masculine then, if you're to describe that black part of the yin and yang? Or I'm making an assumption, maybe it's the white part. It could be either, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No, well, that's a good question. I feel like for me, all right. So what I just was saying about maleness, and to me, divine masculine. If we're going to put that divine in front of it, that takes it to another level, right? So first we have what I would call like maleness, and that can even be flaccid. It can be flaccid. But when we take it up to the divine masculine, now we're talking about something that's erect. We're talking about an energy that is penetrating, an energy that penetrates, or that can even puncture. And so that to me, when we throw the divine in front of that word masculine, now we're talking about one that are pulling from the higher parts of our being. We can all, a little boy is a male, but it's something different when we start channeling, when we come into puberty and the Kundalini brings on these other archetypes, these other personas. Now we become something, a divine masculine.
And I love how you always bring it back to the sexual metaphor too. And this is the spiritual sexual empowerment show, so it's perfect. This is your home.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's a good point about it. Sometimes it can puncture. It's almost like, and what immediately came up for me when I heard that word, when you said puncture, I thought of like dominating, or exerting power over, or going too far with something. And that, I don't know, that's what came up for me. Hey, Kirti, thanks for joining. Gosh, I haven't seen you guys in so long. I just get excited seeing your names.
Peace, my love.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I like the emphasis that you put on the word puncture, because, to penetrate, is one thing, but to puncture something, we now probably done some damage.
Yeah.
And a lot of the masculinity on the planet now is either flaccid, so it's useless, but in a sense, because it's not able to do its function, so it's coming to with no solidness to it, or it's overly hard, and it's now stabbing, and overstepping its boundaries. And I feel like that's part of what we call, this term is being thrown around a lot, toxic masculinity, or what's another, I did a video and I can't think of the name of it, but I didn't use the word toxic, but basically it was the idea of overstepping the boundary, like even to the point of like, if we're just playing our music too loud, we're not, or we go to the grocery store and they're playing music. Like, I might not want to hear that song, or I'm pumping my gas and you're giving me advertisements or advertisements. And it's become a thing of non-consent in this culture.
Entitlement in a way, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And we can talk about that too, with even race and, some of the kind of white entitlement, or whatever, even the dominant culture is entitlement as well. And I was at actually it was the grocery store, the bank earlier today, and I saw these trucks that were parked across several spots, and I see that, like, I've seen that we have the big monster truck and it parks diagonal so that nobody can, ding their doors, but it took up 4 parking spots. I was like,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm like, usually that's only a man that does that. You can usually assume that was a man that is driving that vehicle. Not always.
I was going to say, because Natasha, I have an aunt, shout out Kirti, I met her last week when we went to Virginia. My aunt Mary, she was, she loves the CADILLACs, the Cadillacs. And she would do that. She would park and take up all these times. But she has a lot of, God bless my Aunt Mary, but I feel like she has a lot of that energy that you're talking about.
Well, and I could see almost like if you have like a historic car or something that's very, very precious, that you're just taking out for the day. But when it's like, just your regular monster truck or whatever, it does feel a little bit entitled. And I know that you and I have been talking, like, discussing a little bit just through Messenger or whatever, some of the Native American culture and some of like how I guess you could call this a masculine thing, where they, colonizers came over and they just, I want the land, so I'm going to take it. And
Right.
then we have this term savages. And
Mm-hmm.
like you post in your story yesterday, we don't think of like, we only see the anger. So whether we're talking about like an oppressed, or some people don't like that word, but you know, the culture that has been on the other side of oppression, um, they're things have happened to them that is heinous, that is awful, but we focus on the anger, the natural response to what was done to them, rather than looking at it in context and seeing what was done to them. And it's I've seen this so often as a therapist and social worker over my many years of dealing with especially women, but both genders of sexual abuse. And you know, it's like, why are they, there's anger at the victim for finally telling the truth or disclosing it, rather than looking at what happened, right? Because it's uncomfortable, and it means things are going to have to change, and that sort of thing. And so I think about, in many ways, like our country was founded on these ideas of just come and take whatever you want. Or I posted something last week about men who might visit a woman or date a woman or whatever and stay in her home, eat her food, like maybe enjoy her body, but then be like, thanks, see you later.
Yeah,
And
right.
not think to ever, you know, have it flow both ways and replenish the garden. And then we're seeing it now on the planet too, with replenishing Mother Earth, right? How we keep enjoying her waters and her beaches and her lands, and we're planning a trip to Tulum, Tantra and Tulum pretty soon.
TIT.
TIT. We'll tell people about that later.
Right.
But one of the things that I heard is, I can't remember if it was Tulum or if it was another area, they had to tell the people, the tourists, to go away for a little while because it was hurting the land and it was
Wow.
putting too much stress on the land. And so they had to shut things down so that so Mother Earth could heal. And so that's just giving different examples of maybe this penetrating or puncturing energy that you're talking about. And obviously, especially when we're talking about the land, that's definitely both men and women. It's not exclusive to gender, that kind of like taking what you want and not replenishing. And I don't know what you think about any of that, or if you've had similar thoughts.
No, I think everything that you said there is potent. Shout out to Michael, powerful young energy worker,
Oh,
coming out of the
Michael.
ATL. Yeah, aka Fulcrum 217.
Thanks
Um,
for joining.
yeah, yeah, no question. Yeah, Natasha, I feel like I have one sister, Malins Bart Williams, very powerful sister. Y'all check her out. She had a very powerful TED talk, and then I also did an Instagram. I mean, I did a interview with her. I'll send you the link so you can hear her. But she said the difference between rape and reap, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just a juxtaposition of the words,
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, the land gives us, and if we work with her, we can reap, you know. But for some reason, when we're doing that not the penetrating thing, but when we're doing this puncturing thing and stabbing, and it's like we've set up things to rape from her.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's the thing: the challenge is that when the feminine on the planet, or when conscious beings give pushback, we are the savages now. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to say that, okay, yeah, if I'm gonna be a savage, I'm gonna be a divine savage. And so any one of those things that they call us, any of those things that could be derogatory, I can say that there's still an aspect of God in it, if we do it for the right
Mm-hmm.
reasons, if we do it in alignment. I think people that are quote unquote oppressed, we've been sold too much on being peaceful. That is a beautiful expression of God, is to be
Mm-hmm.
peaceful. And
Mm-hmm.
there are other expressions of God too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
don't want our white blood cells to be peaceful. We want them
Right.
motherfuckers.
Right.
We
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. If
Take
there's
care of
any
the
trait,
cancer.
exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Take care of the cancer, the COVID, whatever it is that is the intruder, the influenza.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is that is an intruder,
Mm-hmm.
we want those white blood cells to be warlike.
Mm-hmm. Which is, again, a divine masculine thing. Like, I know when I am getting in touch with my masculine energy, that's when I'm like, raw, you know, and I'm penetrating, like you're saying, instead of puncturing. I'm going after my goals, or I'm standing up for myself, or whatever else. And I totally get what you're saying. And I think a lot of people have a hard time seeing the difference between righteous anger and messy, sloppy, I don't want to hear your anger kind of thing. And
Yeah,
how,
and
yeah,
you know, I feel like, excuse me, Natasha, I feel like that is why warriors work on themselves a lot. A soldier is just pointed in a direction. Basically, a soldier to me, and I know it's, you know, this is semantics. You could change the words, or, you know, maybe what I call a warrior, somebody thinks of that as a soldier, but the way I'm using the word, a soldier to me is just a human bullet. You point him or her in the direction, and they go do whatever you tell them to do. A warrior, though, is going to take some time for introspection. And it's like, okay, before I chop your neck, because I'm about to chop your neck, but but I'm going to at least make sure that I'm in alignment, and that is in alignment with the bigger picture, you know, and that the rage that I'm feeling is in fact righteous, as you said.
right. Yeah, and I was in a comment thread on Facebook, which is always a danger zone, right? To get involved. And I do pick my battles. And it was a friend that I've connected with posting something, and I was basically like in agreement, but also sharing some of my clinical background, which I thought I could add something to the conversation. And then I had several men kind of jump on me and try to invalidate what I had to say. Of course, one of them, he's a guitar player. The other one is, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I have 20 years of experience working with this particular issue. What happens to be child sexual abuse and whatnot. And so I just suggested to him that perhaps he might be mansplaining by actually informing me on my own profession, you know, and just not really aware of it, but feeling again like the monster truck entitlement to come in and impose his viewpoint as if it's the right one. And just to put things into context, I feel like there's been a lot of this going on politically, is just people insisting that their viewpoint is the right one and having a really hard time discerning. And I have a neuro-emotional technique chiropractor that I go to. And I saw him today, and I was like, that this has been such an emotional, mental thing in my body, that my body was physically responding to it. And so what he does is he clears that energy from your body. He finds the root cause of it, right? And so he said, 90% of my patients the last couple of days have been coming in with the same issue.
Oh,
of
wow.
just like the polarization, the like, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm superior, you're inferior, which is the epitome of narcissism, really. And but anyway, I'm kind of standing up for myself in this comment thread, and it just became more apparent to me that there was no space to hear both perspectives. And one man actually said to me how sexist I was and then, do I want to be treated as a victim? Do I want to focus on, like, you know, not being treated the same? Do you want to be equal or not, kind of thing? And I was like, wow, that's really bold, you know, coming from a white man, and who hasn't, he's still a human, so he's still had experiences where he's been oppressed or somebody's exerted their power on him, I'm sure. But to have it happen almost every day in the systemic problem and not acknowledge that is a problem, right? So how do we, and you do this really well, acknowledge what happens, and also don't attach it to your identity? And so he's accusing me of attaching it to my identity. And I'm like, I invited him to watch the show because he just doesn't, he's making an assumption. He doesn't really know me, right? But
Right.
it's important to speak up. That's that warrior energy, I feel like, because if you don't speak up, it keeps happening. And I watched this video by RFK Jr. today, which is beautiful. I posted on my Facebook. And he's saying the reason why this happened, the reason why we're in this thing right now is because we allowed it. So where is this divine masculine that we need on the planet, whether it's in a man or a woman body? We need that right now.
Ashe. Yeah, no, we definitely need it, Natasha. And the reason why we are at the place that we are is, like you said, because the divine masculine has fallen asleep. We've had maleness, We've had even a tinge of masculinity, albeit toxic or unevolved. And what we need is a masculine energy expressed through all human beings, especially through those male gendered ones, for us to show up in a way that is in alignment with nature. Somewhere the masculinity on this planet has taken on a form that is not in alignment with nature itself. And anytime anything becomes artificial to that level, it's going to be toxic. You know, we create things and we pump chemicals into the ocean, and the reason why these things are toxic is because we've made these polymers and these different molecules, and we've made a non-naturally occurring thing now, and now we're putting it back into nature. It's going to throw off the goddamn ecosystem. And our egos, when we take a little bit of this theory and a little bit of that, and we put together this idea of ourself that is not in alignment with nature, is going to be toxic to the rest of us. And that one of the masters that I learned from, Master Yao, we were talking about him before we got on. He calls that the counterfeit personality. See, we come to the planet with a personality that would be in alignment and would help us to draw the right relationships, would help us to have the right interactions, the right ideas to help us to do our purpose here on the planet. But then, because of society and all the other things that the average human being is bombarded with on today's planet, most of us form what he calls a counterfeit personality, which has nothing to do with why we're here on the planet in the first place, and is, if we don't deal with it, it's going to actually become toxic.
Interesting. So the counterfeit personality, tell me more about that. How does that form, and what's its purpose? Because even dysfunctional behavior kind of has a function. It's like dysfunctional, but it has a function. It's keeping you from growing or getting somewhere. Yeah.
Right. No, I think you just answered it right there. It's like we form these as protections. You know, we form these based on false BS or false belief systems, as I like to call it. You know, there's good reasons why the counterfeit personality sometimes I think is even epigenetics. We genetically are predisposed to have a certain counterfeit personality develop because of our parents or grandparents' counterfeit personalities. So it's a distortion. It's a way of seeing things that may be slightly skewed. You know, and it doesn't make us bad people. But it's that lowercase ego at that point is edging goodness out or edging God out, or if we don't deal with it, it's evil going on. We now we could say we even become evil. And divine masculinity is the opposite of that. It is masculinity that addresses these things, does the healing work that is needed in ourselves, and it becomes that capital EGO, which is evolution going on. And that's what we want from masculinity now, is we want masculinity that is pushing the envelope, pushing evolution in all facets of life. And I would say, like, going back, I know you mentioned the political thing, and I definitely want to go there in this conversation. I believe once as men we do evolve to a certain point, a divine masculine man or a evolved man is not going to vote for or push up or support a weak male. And that's what that's what enrages me now in this moment, is that I am being called upon to vote or to I believe as the divine masculine energy, whether it be expressed in a man or a woman, but especially in a man, I will fall in line if you are a more powerful man, or if you're a more wise man, or if you're a more, you know, godly man. I will cede to you, but I'm not going to do that if I see that you're not as fuck that. And that's what we're being asked to do, and that's problematic.
Yeah, it's really an ethical and moral dilemma, right? When you live an authentic life. And so how then it kind of almost like forces you to be in that ego self where you're like trying to like figure out how to, if I pull this string, then what's the repercussion, and how can I make a change in this system and do the best we can. And I think that it's really about, which RFK Jr. said in his video today too, is it's really about observing the facts of the bipartisan conversations, you know, of looking to see, which I know that you mentioned yesterday too in your story, which I appreciate.
Mm.
And looking at what's actually been done. And when you talked about this false self, it's almost like people have this self that they construct, they carefully construct, and then they try to find evidence to support that idea, when it really should be the opposite. It should be like, okay, let me look at all the evidence and then kind of form an opinion or hypothesis that's equal to changing as more evidence comes in, right? But I think people are very fixed, and it's not easy either. And I catch myself doing it too. You know, I'll catch myself like I kind of have this gelatinized opinion and then like this new thing comes and I'm like, okay, let me keep flipping this, because if it comes from this person, I'm going to be less likely to explore it. If it comes from this person, I'm going to be more open to exploring it. So this is really interesting, right? And then the way in which you introduce information to people is so important too, the energy with which you bring it.
Yeah, and I think that is a function of the divine masculine, is that it is able to present information or whatever, but is able to do so still being in contact both with their balls and with their heart. And we don't have to see one or the other. It's like we can do both. I can feel my penis between my legs, and I can feel my heart at the same time, and be able to speak from that place.
Yeah, that's a good point. Another video I watched, I can't remember the doctor's name, but I also posted this on my Facebook today. A dear friend posted it, who's also a very critical thinker. He said that what we're leaving in society is, you know, there's three ways of knowing information. One is intuition. The other is what people have told us about something, which is like our history books or scientist reports or news stories or whatever. And then three, our experiences, our direct experiences of things. And what's happening these days is 1 and 3 are going away.
Nice.
I just made that up on the spot. But
oh, that was dope. That was good.
this
I like
part,
that.
that
Yeah,
was me. That wasn't him. I don't want to give him a bad name. But
that was dope. I like it.
See, I tell you, you rub off on me, Shophar. But that's what it is. It's like, then pretty soon we're basing 100% of our perception of truth on what somebody else told us, instead of trusting ourselves, our direct experiences, our intuition, and balancing that with other information that we come across.
Yeah, and we have to understand that there is a war for our minds and hearts, and that information is manipulated. And that's an age-old thing, is that the information in our holy books and now in the media and now by another branch is social media, but information has been manipulated for a long time. And if we manipulate information, these are the things literally that informs us. The things that we are forming ourselves into is from information. And we are, if the information is skewed, it's going to make a skewed being, and that's what's been happening for a long time. And then it's like carbon copies of carbon copies. Now that's what we're the point of, is like we're mimicking other people who mimic someone else.
Wow, you know? Clones.
Clones.
Artificial intelligence. Wow.
Artificial intelligence. Yeah, I said this in, I think, a poem of mine or whatever. Like, we talk about artificial intelligence like it's going to be these robots and everything like that, and that's one level. But you and me and the rest of us are artificial intelligence. If we are not what God put us on the planet, or God has put us on the planet to do, we are artificial intelligence.
Yep, that makes sense. And I know you and I have talked about this before, but I grew up in northern Wisconsin, a pretty rural area, and a lot of tribal lands. My stepbrothers are Native American, and a lot of Native American folks in my town. And so I remember having the same teacher for both 5th and 6th grade. I guess he liked our class so much that he decided to teach 6th grade the next year. And he was a small town, so you can do these things. But he was also part Native. So even though our history books were pretty whitewashed, he added, you know, some of the Native history, like you're telling, that wasn't always given. And so looking at the time, I was like, oh, this is cool, because I always like hearing personal stories and family histories and whatever else. But now I'm so grateful, to have been exposed to that, um, as I was learning. And then that just makes me realize, because I think about things like Black culture and Black history, that I still don't know enough about, because it wasn't readily available for me to consume. Right. And now it's like having to do the work to educate myself. And at the very least, I consider myself as a white person to be open to listening and listening to the experiences. That's where my biggest learning in life has come from. And I'm lucky to be a therapist and a coach and a social worker after, all these years of hearing lots of different experiences of people of color. But I feel like when we flip it to men and women, listening to the experiences, just listening, that's the first step of trying to become more informed, trying to become more compassionate, trying to heal the planet, because we've got lots of diverse people walking on the planet right now. And there's so much value in that when we work together, instead of, this divisiveness that it seems like politicians exploit, is what it feels like.
Oh yeah, they definitely exploit it. And one thing on the point of listening, and the word heart has the
Mm-hmm.
word ear in it, and it has the word hear in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when we really hear someone with that inner ear, you have to go through the heart to really hear someone.
Sure.
You have to. That's why the word hear is in heart. Yes, I think true to their what they were hired for. Many politicians are to be divisive, and even if that's not something that they were hired to do, it's just a natural function. When we are not evolving, we're going to have these things of the counterfeit personality. We're going to have false BS, and it's going to cause us to be divisive, even when we're not trying to be. The heart
Well,
is naturally holistic.
right. And I it's a simple thought, but it's hitting me right now as a profound thought, that if you are trying to get somebody to choose a team, you have to be divisive, right? Because
Right.
you have to choose, that sort of thing. And so, but how do we not get hypnotized by their strategy and start mimicking that behavior in our families and our relationships and our friendships? And I think because of all of the other stresses of 2020 and the years leading up to 2020, perhaps even, I just feel like it was so easy to break us right now, and with this election season, and to get us to turn on each other and think that our neighbor is the problem, or our friend is the problem, or our family member is the problem, when actually all we're doing is absorbing, without realizing it, the energy of these folks that are just playing their role and doing what they always do. So how do we see beyond that, right? And I feel like that, tell me what you think, but I feel like that's that divine masculine energy too, is like seeing the vision, like seeing the focused vision. I have a hawk tattooed on my right arm, my masculine side,
Nice.
because that's what it symbolizes, is like flying up above the bullshit and seeing, what needs that bird's eye view, scanning the future, going to see what's going on over there, coming back and grounding in that information. And to me, that's enhancing my masculine energy. That's why I got the tattoo, right? Whereas I might have other tattoos on my body that I'm trying to bring out the feminine energy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what do you feel like um, either men or women can do to honor and grow this masculine? So I think you've done a pretty good job of defining it, this warrior energy, having to go to battle to express the righteous anger at times, to shut down the behavior that we are no longer willing to tolerate. You also talked about penetration rather than being flaccid, or um, what's the other word that you used?
Uh,
Not penetration, but we were talking about it too, and now it's just like slipped my mind.
Not poke. It's another P word, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
it's another P word. How do
We
we
like these P words.
we're like, we're done with that. Like, we're not even going to think about the word anymore. Perforate. That's another P word. But it was, what the heck? What's the word? Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. But
Yeah,
but
it comes
yeah,
to us.
you know what I'm talking about. So how do we stay grounded in that masculine energy? And then that second part of that question that I want to ask you, because I'm curious as well, and I know that some of my other goddess viewers and perhaps even some of the men might be curious as to how to support that. Like, as a woman, if I'm a predominantly feminine being, which I feel that I am, I how do I support that masculine, that divine masculine rising? How do I do my part in the yin
Mm,
and yang circle?
I say, good question. I think first off, the first question, as far as the feminine out there to support, is to show up in your having, keep doing your own work and show up authentically. Identify identify the men who are carrying that vibration
Mm-hmm.
and love on them in whatever way is appropriate. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
um, and support. Nurture.
Mm-hmm.
In whatever way, and uplift, and vice versa. That men, we should do the same. We should find women who are carrying that vibration of the goddess and do
Mm-hmm.
the same. And as far as men, or the masculine, where we can show up and we can, how to hone that is, in order to forge a sword and everything, you have to have these different elements: the heat, the water, and it takes some elbow grease. We have to bang it out. That's what the process of introspection is. That's what the self work is to find those places where I'm still, I can be better, as a man, and to keep working on those. I know I have blind spots. That's what brotherhood is for. Is like
Mm.
is like having men's circles. It's like, okay, I don't see that I'm not showing up in a certain way. That's what my brother is for. You know. Also show up and respect powerful partnerships. Like
Mm.
Kirti and me. It's like, okay, I have a goddess. Like, let me respect that, and let me, because the goddess, she shows me certain things. So basically, what I'm saying is that it's a tribal thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's we show up with each other as tribe, and we show up as individuals for ourselves first, and then for each other as tribe. I think that communal sharpening, because life will either make us duller or sharper. Like, life will beat the shit out of us and dull our sword,
Mm-hmm.
or it will sharpen us, and that all depends on us how it occurs.
Totally. Totally. Okay, Fulcrum 217 says warriors are developed in fire. I personally don't think it's to develop quality masculine energy. It takes balls and grit.
I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah, I think so too. I think so too. And it
And
does.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you go ahead this time.
I was just gonna say that it does sort of relate to testosterone, because I am
Mm,
a, my PhD is mind body medicine, so I deal with a lot of biology too. And some people don't like talking about different, they like saying, oh, we're all the same or whatever, but it's not true. Like, you have a bunch more testosterone coursing through your body than I do. And I actually like when I get some higher testosterone, because it helps me with that grit. It helps me with, speaking up. Not that I have too much of a problem these days with speaking up, but I also, just gives me a little extra oomph, where it's almost like I can't not speak up. But I also get that being pregnant when I'm in my mother bear energy, so that's maybe a feminine expression of it. Um, but yeah, I think that, being that men are gifted with extra testosterone, and perhaps women are gifted with extra estrogen, just by the nature of our anatomy and these bodies, these human bodies that we're in, it's nice to maximize on that, right?
Yes, I think so, Natasha. And I think two things on that is that we've gotten to a place where we've either babied the masculine,
Mm-hmm.
so much, and it's been, mummified, and
Mm-hmm.
oh, baby, it's okay. No, it's not
Mm-hmm.
okay. Go get it done. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's why sometimes you need that masculine tough love, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing is that, or it's been beaten out of them. It's like, Another thing is like
Mm.
so many men have been beat down to submission,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, to been beaten into submission. So, and his other things is a myriad of things that have made masculinity show up the way it is right now. But another thing that we want to invoke in the man, or to invoke in ourselves, is challenge, and not running from challenge, but actually finding some pleasure or some, you know, as Brother Michael said about the grit, is actually finding, you know, as long as it's not, you know, too much, I guess, but some challenge should not make us just tuck our tail.
Hmm.
And when that testosterone is pumping through our veins, I actually think that there's a certain, you know, we actually cherish that a little bit. It's like, oh, this is a challenge. Like, you roll your
Hmm.
sleeves up and you go to it. But you don't find a lot of men built that way these days. A lot of us, we're, you know, another thing the Master Yao talks about is being in our pain body,
Hmm.
where we see these different things as pain all the time, whereas opposed to, if we can do the, you know, sensual emotional exchange, the sex, this is where to me sex work and sensuality comes into play. If we can start to do rework and rewire ourselves, we can now see that these challenges, you know, it's like the Bible says, count it all joy, my brother, when, you know, the challenges come and everything. It's like now we actually get pleasure from being a
Hmm.
little bit challenged.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I think back to like reading, I don't know if you read Dave Asprey's book, Super, what was it? Super something or another? Game Changer. Game Changer?
Mm,
Game Changers. Something like that. It came out a few years ago, but he dives a little bit into the hormonal stuff, and he says, you know, men, and he talks about like the semen retention too, and why he
mm,
practices semen retention. And there's a formula apparently based on how many years old you are, that how many days you should go without ejaculating.
mm,
And so he talks about, you know, he practices semen retention so that he can keep optimal testosterone levels, and that he knows that after lots of cuddling and lots of emotionally comforting his wife, that he needs to go do some independent things and create some challenges, or like go push some boulders with his boys, or whatever. I don't know. I don't think he uses those exact words, but you know, as a woman, I could understand that. I was like, I like how he really puts it into the biological. And then he also acknowledges like he can't use that as an excuse when you know his wife wants him around or needs him or whatever else. But when she allows him to go meet the challenges of the world and do his independent thing to boost up his testosterone, not only is she getting that fire man that your friend Michael's talking about, you know, that he's full of fire, he's full of that protection energy, he's full of that get up and go, he's directing, you know, the ship in the way that she needs an equal partner too. But
mm,
that's also the hard dick that you're talking about, the
mm,
erection that she's going to benefit from as well. And so, and then also, you know, so there's always a compromise. It's always, again, the yin and yang comes to mind, you know, because if
mm,
he's doing too much of that to his pleasure and not, and her needs aren't being met, then that's a problem. But you know, it's how do you both create? And I know when I have a man in his divine masculine, where he is being that protector, provider, in whichever way you want to, whichever way you want to define that word. It's not always about money. It's not always about um, the traditional sense of the word, but I know you know what I'm talking about, because I always see this in our group where the men are really stepping up into that role, you know, of protector, providership, whatever else. Even something as silly as like walking ahead of us in the dark, you know, in case there's something there. I deeply appreciate that. And when men are being that chivalrous kind of protector, provider energy, out exploring challenges a half step before us, I feel my estrogen swell. I notice after several days of spending time with a man like that, my skin is clear, my breasts are swollen. It's that I can feel the effects of the estrogen being created in my body from the way that I'm reacting to him. And some people think that that sounds a little crazy, but I also heard the analogy today in the video that I was talking about from the doctor of how women's menstrual cycles synchronize when they spend a lot of time together, right? How
right.
did we do that? Are our menstrual cycles contagious?
Mm,
No, but it's we synchronize. And so, you know, that yin and yang, feminine, masculine, synchrony too. It's so it allows us to be in that feminine energy, that masculine energy. And I would also say in same-sex partners or non-binary partnerships, there usually is some sense of polarity too, that maybe not statically, but reciprocity that maybe even flip-flops in certain situations.
Hmm. That makes, yeah, yeah, totally. And see, these are the conversations, Natasha, that lead us to, and shout out to Water Her, and I saw Muhammad on here, a couple of people, peace to y'all. Um, these are the conversations that lead us to start acknowledging that the human being is more than just the body. So that
Mm-hmm.
the woman, the women in the household, synchronize. There's some transfer of information or some synchronicity that's going on that it has nothing to do with the flesh.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing that's causing your breast to swell and for you to feel the different things, the bodily changes that are going on with you, although there was no physical transference of energy. It's because of
Mm-hmm.
being in the presence or being in the auric field of,
Mm-hmm.
or having a masculine or male gendered being hold you even in their mind,
Mm-hmm.
with a certain, you'll be able to pick up on that because you're all receptive. That's what the feminine is.
Mm-hmm.
So the more you're able to relax into your feminine, the more you're able to pick up on these things.
Right. And it's such a gift, I think, for me as a woman who is capable. I can go push some boulders too, like I used to
For
be a
sure.
firefighter. I can do all that stuff. I could prove that to myself, and I don't necessarily want to. That doesn't maybe do the same thing for me in the same way as it might for a man, but I can do it. And so for me, it's a true gift to be able to wear a dress and wear the high heels because it makes me feel feminine. And I have his arm to hang on to in case we hit some cobblestone or whatever else, and that's just me. I'm not saying that every woman should do that because that might not resonate with her. There might be other ways that she expresses her feminine energy, but that's one way that I just love to, because I know that he's next to me. He's going to get the car door. I like when a man drives, if it's a date or whatever else, because I'm a single mom. I'm always carting my kids around. It's just nice to sit back and, being taken somewhere. Also, I saw it a lot in growing up with my mom and my stepdad. He often drove, and it was just sort of modeled, and it was a way of him caretaking for her, just one small way. There are these things that they make a difference, and it has nothing to do with feminism, and it has nothing to do with um, having to. It's about doing these things because it's a gesture of caretaking, of nurturing, and either in honoring. You be in your feminine energy, and I'll be the masculine. And there's times too where I'm okay taking the more masculine role. So.
Well, I think men, when we fail to show up in those ways, when we fail to, and I see a lot of it where, and this is no, well, not a judgment, not a condemnation, I'd say,
Mm-hmm.
of, but, men allowing the women to drive around. And I see it a lot. You don't know the circumstances when it happens or whatever, but I see it, it's very common. And
Mm-hmm.
what I say is that I think that is in general a misunderstanding, or when we as men don't really understand that if we can help y'all preserve your energy
Mm-hmm.
for with these little tasks of like fucking driving the car and
Mm-hmm.
having to pay attention, if we can
Mm-hmm.
have y'all in a relaxed state, the things that the beauty, the pleasure, the powerful things that y'all will bring to us, if we
Mm-hmm.
do that, every motherfucking man would be driving and
Thank
and
you. You get
yeah.
it. Yes, you get it.
Y'all have other divine tasks, especially when as men we help the feminine to tap into the divine feminine,
Yeah.
and to bring on her oracle skills, and to bring in her ability to bring in money and resources in a magical way,
Mm-hmm.
in a way that the masculine energy goes out and hunts, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the feminine energy can draw into it without even having to move. The egg
Mm-hmm.
doesn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The sperm
Exactly.
comes to her.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so I would
And with
rather
yeah.
yeah, I would rather preserve the
Mm.
feminine and do these other tasks and allow you to put, that's when we understand the magic of the feminine though.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so beautiful. And Norma,
Seated hog energy. That's right, Michael.
yeah. And Norma was saying, thank you guys. And is this going to be on YouTube? We are going to figure out how to convert it and put it on YouTube, since we could not do the dual broadcast tonight. So it will be on YouTube, hopefully sooner than later. Yeah, it's so beautiful, Shophar, to have a man that understands that. I mean, just even hearing you say those words, my whole body just relaxed and just it felt warm and expansive like water, and
Right.
I felt the energy that you are acknowledging. And I love being around men like that. And I've shared, I think in my last episode with Michelle on Divine Feminine, that I have not really been dating much at all this year. And COVID might be part of it, but it's really much more than that. And part of it is I feel so nourished just in my friend group by the quality of male friendships, even, that I'm not like looking for anything, and I don't want anything less than that. You know what I mean? Like I'm not willing to allow, talking about allowing and boundaries and whatnot, anything less than that. And so I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. It's just that I feel so full. I feel so held. I feel so seen and appreciated. And it's a really good place to be. And so,
Yeah, and I've told some of my clients with the energy work for years now. Once you start to come into experiencing tantra, and we start to experience this higher level of sensuality and emotionality, that should become the new marker. I love to tell the story how Shakumusu Bear Shango, peace be upon that brother, but he was a brother from Philly. And he was sharing with some of the young bloods, sharing with us that back in the day in Philly, that as a brother coming up, if you tried to holler at a sister and you wasn't doing anything for the people, you got no pussy, you know?
as it
And
should
and
be.
the new standard that I would tell women as we step more and more into the sacred sensuality and everything, that becomes the standard that we are. And as a man, same thing. I'm looking for a woman who understands certain thing about sacred sensuality. That becomes the new benchmark. That's the new threshold. And to hold each other accountable for that. And with that, be patient with each other, because I know, just as I said what I said to you and you felt what you felt, but I have my mom and my sisters, Kirti, all of them can tell you, like, I still drop the ball sometimes. I still can show up and like, oh man, I could have been a little bit more thoughtful in that. Like, I am a recovering numb man. I was numb as fuck at one point, and I look back on my life and I'm like, wow, that was pretty fucked up. Like so it is a growth process, and we, to allow for that patience, but we should be moving towards that at least.
Yeah. And I mean, thank you for acknowledging that too, because it's not, I think a lot of men, they hear stuff like this. They hear conversations like we're having, and they're like, oh, I'm not going to do that. That's some, whatever. But we're not expecting you to be perfect. We're only expecting you to try and to keep striving and to keep growing. And we're going to meet you there. We're going to call you there to that growth. And then we're going to also meet you there. And it's about up leveling together, and maybe one pulls ahead sometimes and the other meets, and then another one pulls ahead and the other meets, but we have to keep rising together. Hence the title, Divine Masculine Rising. And we started with Divine Feminine Rising last week. So
Gotcha.
I really appreciate that authenticity that you share, and that humanness and that vulnerability, because again, that's something that can be rare with men. And perhaps that's the toxic masculinity piece, is afraid to be, or not able to be vulnerable.
Yeah, it's being able to speak from the heart is one of the empowering things with the masculine when we start to learn how to do that. But I understand that why so many of us men, why we've lost our voice when it comes to actually speaking what we are feeling. Like we'll talk around things, but to start being able to show up and to start equating that to strength, and don't look at that as weakness. That is actually a very powerful thing, to be able to speak as a man, like what it is that you're feeling in any situation. I've often said that, it didn't feel like it in the moment, but one of the things that helped me along on my tantric path was my grandmother transitioning back when I was 18 years old. And, I think sometimes that is the relationship with death and loss. When we have a divine understanding of these things, and I'm also keeping up, just so you know, on the time for us. I know we're getting close to the hour point.
Yeah, we're getting close. Thank you.
I think it was like at 7:15 to be around the time,
Oh,
or
okay.
7:10,
Okay,
7:15, something like that. But you know, our connection, understanding and really fully valuing and appreciating life will make us show up in a way that we start speaking from our heart more. When we as men, when we're not really in tune with the beauty of life and understanding the fragileness of it and how quickly it can be gone, we still don't speak from the heart.
Makes sense. Yeah, something that makes you feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had a boyfriend 20 years ago or so. So back then this was rare, but he would speak his emotions. He would tell me how he felt about me, or he would talk about these emotional dynamics in our relationship. And I was so not used to that. And I was also numb too. Like you talk about being a numb man, I was a numb woman, right? From the experiences that I had been through. And I would be so shocked by his his openness and authenticity and emotionality that I would have to process. And it would take me like 2 or 3 days to like process everything that he just shared with me. And then I would come back and be like, okay, so here's what I think. And I didn't know, because I was so young at the time, how rare that was, but it's so beautiful. And to this day, it's just one of the qualities that I really appreciate in him and always look for in a partner, you know, because it was so wonderful to be met in that place. And he was better at it than I was, even being a therapist and being the emotional, you know, the female partner or whatever else. So I appreciate that. I appreciate a man who can be in touch with his feelings and his felt sense in his body and then express it through his heart and throat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I really appreciate that.
Amen.
What else do you think that we need to bring up?
Well, I think when this last short time, for one thing I want to say to that point is like, you know, and showing up fully as human beings on this planet, right? So as a male gender or masculine being is like, one of the things that I'm learning to do is like, okay, we have is a full set of tools, you know, to show up as. It's like, you know, and what I'm saying is like one man might be a handyman, but he you know, he can fix shit, but he, you know, but he doesn't know how to show up emotionally. One man might be really emotionally in tune, but he's not really, but for some reason he still has a disconnect in the bedroom and, you know, or can't get his finances together. And to keep working on ourselves until we are bringing all of these things online. Don't settle for like, oh, I show up in one place, but don't show up in the other. Like keep challenging yourself and keep reveling in the fact that, oh, there's another part of myself that I can work on and get stronger. And the last thing I would like to leave the listeners today with is in this time, Natasha, I feel like the divine masculine that is expressed in all of us as human beings, but especially in us male gendered ones, is courage. And I want to point out that the word courage has rage in it. Courage has rage in it.
Yes.
And if seeing the state of the world right now does not have a little bit of rage, give a little bit of rage to us, keep working on that numbness, because there should be some rage right now, Natasha, from us, all of us, the divine masculine and all of us beings, that the state of this world, the state of the mother, the heart that she is in, aka earth, that the mother heart is in the state that she's in, and that all of us, all God's children, you know, and there should be a little bit of rage and then courage to move forward with that rage.
In a way that penetrates rather than perforates. I'm just going to use perforates.
Right.
What that word is. But
punctures. That was it. Punctures.
There we go. Punctures. And what a perfect way to end this talk tonight. And I know we only have about a minute, but you have a group, a Chi Up group for men, where you're actually helping them together in a group to up level. So I don't know if you can say something about that real quick.
I can say it real quick. I say that it's level up as a man. So it's not, I think with men is always important, especially coming from another man, to say that, you know, it's not saying that there's something wrong with where you're at or anything. This is just leveling up. So you can already be a very powerful man and you can
Hmm.
still be more powerful.
Rising, keep
Keep rising,
rising.
you know,
Yeah, awesome.
and expansive to keep
Expansive.
expanding.
Yes, yes. Make the container bigger. The feminine will fill it.
Sure.
Yeah. All right.
I
Well, we have.
appreciate you, sis.
I
You know,
appreciate
always
you.
big love to you for making